animation. Here, hopefully, we've refined the body mechanics, and we also get a chance to put in some of the core characteristic values that we talked about earlier, like being quick-witted, the struggle, and things like that. To be specific, we wanted to show how he reacts and how strong he reacts, how quickly he reacts after running out of ammunition. He makes a decision, he goes for it, and he fights hand-to-hand combat against the Zerglings. Also, just to show the weight, he has to put his full body weight into the Zergling. And if you watch at the very end, he has a little stutter step. He has to put so much weight into the throw and so much force, he has a little side step, a little stutter step there. By taking all these small ideas and compounding them together, we can overall make a better cinematic. I'm going to play this again with sound. All right, now I'm going to hand it back to Scott, talk a little bit about what happens when you finish the animation and you export it to the game.
Thanks, James. So at this point, Shimon's team has finished the models, at least the model portion of them, even if they're not textured. James's team has put together some animations that are ready to be put into the game, so now we export it. The first pass of an export almost always goes really, really badly. That was one universal truth on StarCraft 2. So the first time we export it, it looks something like this, where there's no textures on the wall. Warfield is doing something really odd. He doesn't have a rifle. There's no Zergling. Kind of a mess. But it's really hard to tell even what's going on here. So this is where being in-game actually has one advantage. In the tools that we have, all we have to do is back the camera out, spin it around a little bit, look at it from a different angle. And oh yeah, that's definitely not his correct animation. I still don't even see the Zergling, and there's some flickering polygons going on behind in the sky. So we pull out even further, try to figure out what that is. And okay, that's the Zergling. I don't think that's one of his regular moves. So at this point, we go into hardcore technical mode and just try to debug it and figure out what happened. As it turns out, the wall just wasn't textured yet, no problem. The rifle had never been exported, so it just wasn't available in the game. That's an easy fix. And then for Warfield and the Zergling, well, it turns out their skeleton hierarchy had changed since they were last exported, which means we load up the animation on it, and the animation is trying to move the wrong bones to the wrong place. So once we fix all those things, it comes together. And you can see from this angle that it's all working. You notice there's a little pop in the middle on Warfield. That's actually the shot cut. And we do a lot of that, where we animate the actors directly to the camera. So when we go from one shot to the next, we'll move them a little bit and actually jump around. Some places, quite a bit, but it's not actually a bug. It just looks like one. But in fact, if we look from the real camera, Zergling, kill, throw, perfect. That's what we were looking for. Actually, it's a fairly common problem. In fact, it really happens all the time, that when we export stuff to the game engine, things disappear. Things aren't showing up where they're supposed to, and we have to try to figure out why that is. So there's a lot of debugging time. And sometimes, even after things have been working for a while, they'll suddenly stop working. So, for example, we'll go play a movie that worked yesterday, for example, Escape from Marsara. The day before I captured this, I know there are mutalisks in this scene beating the snot out of the Hyperion as it's trying to escape. But now they're gone. So I got to try to figure out where they went. And sometimes that takes a lot of research and digging. Other times, they're really easy to spot. They're all hanging out on the bridge. Now, why are they doing that? Well, the main source of the problem is usually the fact that when you're making a pre-rendered movie, you're taking all of your assets and your animations, and you're handing it over to a rendering engine, and all that engine does, all it knows how to do, is draw those things to a frame. Just takes what you give it and draws it. But we're dealing with a game engine here, and a game engine wants to do a whole lot more than that. So if I give a model with a bunch of animations to the game engine, it wants to attach AI to it and move it around. It wants to give the player control of it. It wants to make that unit run around and attack other units. It wants to move it from point A to point B. It wants to blend animations together so that they can run and shoot at the same time. There's all these things that it really badly wants to do, and we have to take a lot of steps to tell it not to do that. So when we fail to do that, then things start to break. But once we convince the game engine to leave our stuff alone and just let it draw, then everybody's happy. So now that it's running in the engine, we can start lighting. And for that part, I'm going to hand it off to Shimon again.
Thanks, Scott. Right, so once everything's exported into the engine and the animation is done, we require locked cameras as well most of the time. Then we can start lighting. First thing we really want to do when we start lighting is kind of find out what environment is the character in, where's he at. In this case, we know it's Char. We know Char is it's a pretty harsh environment. It's filled with lava, it's actually infested with Zerg. So not a nice environment to be in. What we do is we take all the final textured assets and then drop them into the set, and this is what we get as a base lighting. Then what we try and do is basically we add just default lighting. We just want to explore what the character, how he reacts to lights. Where does the specular shine, where doesn't it, and where's the best place it can be. After that, we actually add ambient occlusion. That's just a fancy word for saying contact shadows. We want him to sit better with the environment. We want him to have shadows when he leans against the wall. Once we actually do that, we start refining where the direction of the sunlight comes from. We do this until we're generally happy. And as you can see in this shot, he's actually a little dark. But that's actually when character lighting physically starts, when we actually have this base to work on, the base lighting. And basically in Start 2, most of our characters have 3 lights to them. That's not a golden rule we had, but we gave him 3 lights. So Warfield's first light went onto his face. We wanted to make sure you could see his face. We wanted to make sure the emotion on his face was seen, and this was the first light we were going to give it to him. Our second light was basically on the bayonet. That was a major focus of this shot. We wanted to see the bayonet pop out, and we wanted the user to also look at it. But what started to happen here in this shot was basically Warfield was too integrated with the background. So for the third light, what we did is we basically rim light him and the gun. That just pops him out of the set. Now you can basically look at the gun. We even added more of a specular highlight to the gun so you can really see it. And that basically completes the lighting. That gets passed on to our art director to approve. And once that's approved, we add the final pass, which is depth of field and an effects pass. That pretty much completes the shot. Here is the final capture from the game as completed. And with that, I'll pass you on back to James for localization.
Thanks, Shimon. Localization. This was a huge challenge for us. We're very proud to say that we shipped this game simultaneously worldwide in 11 different languages. Every single sign, every single decal, every single poster, heads-up display, and all the lines of dialogue. Our own localization team, as well as our individual artists and programmers, helped make this happen. So I wanted to show some of this off. Right here I have the next clip is a Korean version of our cinematic Fire and Fury.
칸으로 작동했으면 좋겠군.
그러게나 말이야. 난 외계 고물 나부랭이 따위에 목을 걸기는 싫다고.
물론 그렇겠지. 하지만 내가 저 물건에 모든 걸 걸었다면 벌써 포기했을 거야. 우리는 서로 믿고 의지했기에.
So we had hundreds of lines of dialogue, and we had to figure out a way to animate all these lines of dialogue in the game. So we came up with a solution, and it was to use a piece of software called Face Effects. And what it does is you take a line of text, an audio file, and a properly set up character. You interpolate all of these things, you put them together, and you get something that looks like this.
Just a friendly business proposition. Do you even know what the Dominion are doing out here?
So we use this type of technology for a lot of the game. But when we use it straight away, just the programming, just the procedural method, we still have some pops. Some of the dialogue runs together. It's a little overly done. So what we do for some of the close-up scenes, we animate on top of it as well. So in the next clip, you might see that some of the pops are taken out. We've abbreviated some of the dialogue. It's a little bit smoother, more convincing.
Just a friendly business proposition.
Do you even know what the Dominion are doing out here?
So one of the other challenges for doing localization was how it was translated. The localization team worked very hard on not necessarily translating word for word, but understanding the inner meaning and then rewriting for that new language. Also, casting. Casting was huge. And to show off the casting, I wanted to demonstrate the Russian version of the same cinematic.
Бога, чтобы он сработал так, как мы рассчитываем.
Уж лучше бы он сработал. Мне не улыбается рисковать жизнью из-за какой-то инопланетной хреновины.
Верно, Тайкус. Но если бы я делал ставку только на артефакт, я бы столько не протянул. Мы в